Picture this, it's 2011. A massive fierce storm is raging over Wenzhou, China, and a single bolt of lightning strikes the ground. In an absolute instant, it completely disables a terrestrial signaling circuit. Suddenly, a speeding high-speed train is completely invisible to the controllers. 40 lives were tragically lost that day. For decades, you see, the brain of the railway, those incredibly complex signaling systems that stop thousands of tons of steel from colliding, well, they've been chained to the ground, totally vulnerable to the whims of Mother Nature. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're investigating a quiet but massive civilizational leap that's happening right above our heads. We are going to uncover exactly how China is abandoning the vulnerable Earth, effectively rewriting the laws of physics and building an invisible space-based railway system to control the ground, directly from the stars. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with escaping the vulnerable Earth. Then meet the Sky Titans, Guowang and Qianfan. Next, we'll decode quantum security and 6G shields, look into exporting the orbital standard, weigh the geopolitical price tag, and finally, explore the new superpower frontier. Just look at this headline for a moment from South China Morning Post. This is the news behind today's video. China molds space-based control system for high-speed rail. Can it be hacked? Study shows low-orbit satellites might avoid another Wenzhou disaster, but reveals how hackers could deliberately crash speeding trains. With that said, let's go straight to the intro.
The algorithm buries channels that show the truth like mine every single day. The only thing that fights back is you. One like, one subscribe, turn on the bell icon. That's how the truth about China survives on YouTube. Don't let it disappear. Thank you very much.
Let's jump right in. Section 1. Escaping the vulnerable Earth, leaving terrestrial limits beyond. Okay, let's dive into this. For literally decades, traditional railway control has relied on thousands of kilometers of physical trackside equipment. We're talking signal lamps, radio masts, ground transponders, stuff that is easily wiped out by a single violent storm, a flood, or an earthquake. To solve this glaring issue, researchers propose an absolute masterstroke, the space-based train control system. Imagine speeding bullet trains moving at 350 kilometers per hour, transmitting their exact coordinates and speed directly to satellites in low Earth orbit. Those satellites then beam the data straight to command centers in the blink of an eye.
By shifting the actual brain of the railway up into the vacuum of space, this new cyber-physical architecture ensures that the primary point of control simply cannot be washed away or shaken by the Earth ever again. Moving to Section 2, the Sky Titans, the staggering scale of low Earth orbit infrastructure. To keep a 350 km/h train perfectly synchronized with space without a single millisecond of lag, you obviously can't just use a couple of satellites. You need a massive mega-constellation. And the sheer staggering scale of China's ambition here sits at nearly 28,000 planned satellites. While a lot of the world is focused on basic commercial satellite internet, a completely sovereign dual-use orbital backbone is quietly being assembled to provide a literal God's-eye view over an entire planetary logistics network. Now, what's really interesting about this data is how this colossal undertaking is actually split into two distinct titans. Looking at the 2024 reports, we have Guowang, the national network. This is a state-owned fleet of roughly 13,000 planned satellites that are deeply integrated into national security and military C4ISR architecture. Then, on the commercial and mixed ownership side, you have Qianfan, or Thousand Sails, which is another 15,000 satellites targeting broadbands in the Internet of Things. Brought together, they forge a multi-mission behemoth that goes so far beyond just basic communication. Section 3. Quantum security and 6G shields, the unhackable defense architecture. So this brings up the very obvious elephant in the room, cybersecurity. If an entire rail network is being controlled from space, what happens if someone intercepts the signal, right? Could a bad actor theoretically hijack a massive bullet train from a laptop in their basement? Well, the answer, dictated by the unforgiving laws of quantum physics, is a resounding no. While a lot of other nations are still struggling to patch basic terrestrial cybersecurity vulnerabilities, China has already achieved a world first. We are talking about a 10,000-kilometer quantum-secured link between Beijing and South Africa. And they are actively integrating this exact unhackable quantum-encrypted communication directly into their non-terrestrial orbital networks. Let's actually walk through how this defense in-depth architecture operates in practice.
Step 1. The satellite transmits a quantum-encrypted signal, which is mathematically secure from surveillance. Step 2. The train's onboard computer receives and validates that unique cryptographic signature. Step 3, and this is the crucial zero-trust mechanism. The system doesn't just blindly trust the signal, it instantly cross-checks it against the train's own physical inertial navigation units. And step 4, if even the slightest anomaly is detected, it immediately triggers a safe state protocol. It is an incredibly sophisticated, lightning-fast safety net. But honestly, this isn't just about playing defense. This is essentially a massive technological factory floating in the dark. We're looking at the integration of space-based 6G networks designed to be completely independent of Western infrastructure, alongside near self-sufficiency in these specialized radiation-hardened chips that you absolutely need to survive in orbit. Add in laser communications transmitting data at a blistering 400 gigabits per second, which makes your home Wi-Fi look like the Stone Age, by the way, along with AI-driven predictive maintenance, and you have an ecosystem that is almost entirely self-reliant. Moving to Section 4, exporting the orbital standard, the global rollout of the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, China is not keeping this miracle of engineering locked up just for themselves. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, they're actively establishing a brand new global standard for interoperability. Nations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America are signing up. We're talking everywhere from Brazil and Indonesia to Thailand and Kazakhstan. And why wouldn't they? By adopting this space-based rail and internet system, developing nations get to entirely skip the agonizing, time-consuming, and crazy expensive era of laying down thousands of miles of vulnerable terrestrial cables. They just jump straight into the space age. Section 5. The geopolitical price tag. Let's unpack the dual-use dilemma. Look, every massive technological leap casts a shadow. The geopolitical reality here is that the exact same infrastructure guiding a civilian train can also guide intelligence or military assets. On one hand, this is an absolutely unmatched tool for closing the digital divide. It bypasses costly cables, brings blistering 6G internet to developing nations, and seamlessly integrates regional trade borders. But on the flip side, it creates deep strategic dependence. Host nations effectively surrender the underlying control of their own transport logistics to a foreign-operated satellite network, which invites profound single-source provider risks and, of course, the potential for orbital surveillance. It's a massive trade-off. Finally, Section 6, the new superpower frontier, the undisputed leader in scale and ambition. When you actually look at the raw numbers here, it brilliantly illustrates the climax of this whole narrative. According to 2024 railway statistics, China's high-speed rail network sits at over 45,000 kilometers. To put that into perspective, the rest of the entire planet combined sits at roughly 42,000. They are already the undisputed kings of the ground, and now they are targeting fully autonomous, driverless trains exceeding 400 kilometers per hour, guided totally invisibly from orbit. But sustaining something like this requires unrestricted access to space. China's orbital launch cadence has become frankly breathtaking. They are blowing past historical averages of 40 to surpass well over 100 launches per year. And with the introduction of new reusable rockets like the Zhuge 3, which drastically cuts the cost of reaching orbit, they are making sure that the Thousand Sails network will always have the wind at its back. What we're witnessing right now is the birth of an orbital superpower. A mechanical invention born out of the coal and smoke of the Industrial Revolution is being propelled straight into a cyber-physical reality. They aren't just playing the terrestrial game anymore. They've literally built a whole new stadium in the stars. So with quantum encryption guarding the data and tens of thousands of satellites watching over the rails, the physical vulnerabilities of the Earth are being left completely behind. But what do you think? Is an invisible space-based web the inevitable future for trains and logistics in your own country? Or are those shadowy strategic risks just too high a price to pay? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep looking beyond the clouds. Goodbye.